You have lied today, not on purpose, not even knowingly. Your brain did it for you, and it did it so smoothly that you believed every word. Somewhere in the last 24 hours, you gave a reason for something you did, and that reason was not the real reason. It felt true. It sounded true. It was completely made up. This is not about the small social lies you tell to be polite. This is about something stranger. Your brain, the organ you trust to tell you the truth about your own mind, is constantly inventing explanations for things it does not actually understand. Scientists call this confabulation, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it in your own daily life. Think about the last time someone asked why you picked a certain job, a certain partner, a certain brand of coffee. You answered instantly. You probably felt confident. But here is the uncomfortable question. How do you actually know that answer is true? What if your brain built that explanation after the fact, the same way a lawyer builds a case, picking evidence that supports a decision that was already made for reasons you never consciously accessed? To understand why this happens, you need to understand what your brain is actually built to do. Your brain is not a truth machine. It is a meaning machine. Its number one job, older than language, older than logic, is to make the world feel coherent. A world that makes sense feels safe. A world full of unexplained gaps feels dangerous. So when your brain hits a gap between what happened and what you understand about why it happened, it does not leave that gap empty. It fills it instantly with whatever explanation feels most plausible, and then it hands you that explanation labeled as fact. The person who proved this most dramatically was neuroscientist Michael Gazzaniga, working with patients who had undergone a rare surgery that split their brain in two. In these patients, the connection between the left and right hemispheres was severed to control severe epilepsy. Gazzaniga realized this gave him an extraordinary window into how the brain builds explanations. He could show an image to only the right hemisphere, which controls the left side of the body, but which, in most people, cannot produce speech. In one now famous demonstration, he flashed the word walk to the patient's right hemisphere. The patient stood up and began walking. Then Gazzaniga asked why. The left hemisphere, the verbal half of the brain, had no idea about the instruction the right hemisphere had received. It had not seen the word walk, but it did not say, I don't know. Instead, without hesitation, the patient answered that they wanted to go get a soda. That explanation was invented on the spot. It felt completely true to the person saying it. Gazzaniga called this the interpreter, a part of the left brain whose job is to constantly narrate your behavior into a story that makes sense, whether or not that story is accurate. This is the deep dive that changes how you see your own mind. The interpreter does not just activate during brain surgery experiments. It is running constantly in every brain, including yours right now. And every time you act on impulse, on emotion, on gut feeling, or on a decision your unconscious mind made faster than your conscious mind could track, the interpreter steps in afterward and builds you a tidy explanation. And crucially, it does not flag that explanation as a guess. It hands it to you with full confidence, the same confidence you feel remembering your own name. You might think, fine, that is an extreme case involving split brains. Surely normal people are more reliable narrators of their own choices. And this is exactly what psychologists Richard Nisbett and Timothy Wilson tested in a study that has become one of the most cited papers in the history of psychology. In 1977, they set up a simple consumer choice task. They laid out 4 identical pairs of stockings on a table and asked shoppers to pick their favorite. Nothing distinguished the stockings except position on the table. And yet, shoppers overwhelmingly preferred the stockings on the far right, a well-documented effect where position influences preference without people noticing. When researchers asked why they chose that particular pair, nobody said because it was on the right. Instead, people confidently described superior texture, better weave, richer color, reasons that had nothing to do with the actual cause of their choice, because the pairs were literally identical. Nisbett and Wilson concluded that people often have no direct access to the mental processes that drive their behavior, yet they will still generate a confident, detailed explanation rather than admit uncertainty. If this still feels like a quirky lab trick rather than something shaping your real life, Consider the choice blindness experiments run decades later by cognitive scientist Peter Johansson and his colleagues. Participants were shown pairs of faces and asked to pick which one they found more attractive. Using a card trick style switch, the experimenters would then hand the participant the opposite face from the one they had actually chosen without the participant noticing the swap most of the time. Remarkably, participants did not catch the switch. Instead, they proceeded to explain in detail and with total sincerity why they preferred a face they had never actually chosen. They described features, feelings, and reasons for a decision that was not even theirs. Their brain filled the gap between the question why and an answer, instantly manufacturing conviction out of nothing. Here's the counterintuitive twist that separates this from simple lying. A liar knows they are lying. Confabulation feels nothing like that from the inside. The explanations your brain generates arrive with the same emotional certainty as a memory of what you had for breakfast. There is no internal warning light, no sense of fabrication, because the interpreter in your brain is not trying to deceive you. It is trying to protect you from the unsettling experience of not understanding your own actions. An unexplained self is more threatening to your sense of stability than a wrong explanation. So your brain always prefers a wrong explanation over no explanation at all. This connects directly to memory as well, an area studied extensively by psychologist Elizabeth Loftus. Her decades of research on eyewitness testimony revealed that memories are not stored like video recordings, waiting to be replayed accurately. They are reconstructed every time you recall them, and each reconstruction can be subtly altered, filled in, or distorted by suggestion, mood, or context, while still feeling completely authentic to the person remembering. Loftus demonstrated that people can even come to sincerely recall entire events that never happened, once a plausible narrative was suggested to them. This is confabulation operating not just on your reasons, but on your history, rewriting your past into something coherent, even when coherence requires invention. So what does this actually mean for how you move through your day? It means the confident story you tell about why you snapped at a coworker, why you scrolled your phone for 40 minutes, why you fell for a certain person, or why you avoided a task you needed to finish deserves more suspicion than you currently give it, not because you are dishonest, but because your brain is architecturally designed to prioritize a satisfying narrative over an accurate one. The feeling of certainty you get when explaining yourself is not evidence that the explanation is correct. It is simply evidence that your interpreter finished its job quickly. The practical shift here is not to distrust every thought you have. It is to build a small pause between action and explanation. When you notice yourself giving an instant, tidy reason for a decision, especially an emotional one, treat that explanation as a hypothesis rather than a fact. Ask what actually happened in the moments right before the decision. What were you feeling? What were you avoiding? What pattern have you repeated before in similar situations? Real self-understanding usually feels less neat than confabulation. It involves uncertainty, contradiction, sometimes admitting you genuinely do not know. That discomfort is not a sign you are failing to understand yourself. It is a sign you are bypassing the interpreter and looking at something closer to the truth. You have lied today, not out of malice, but because your brain is a machine built for coherence, not accuracy. Somewhere in the last 24 hours, you gave a confident reason for something you did, and your mind never once flagged that reason as a guess. The story felt true because your brain needed it to feel true. Now you know why.